In the previous video, we have created this event detail page or this meetup detail page where we can show the details of the event. And in this video, we're going to continue with the attending functionality of the event, right? Which is the RSVP functionality. We can't go very far because here we have this real meetup website right here. And I think what we are going to implement is this part. You see, this is a footer. Right? We can simply just put a button right here on this view event detail page. But I think I want to give myself a challenge. I want to make it as real as possible. So we're going to implement this footer over here, which means that I'm going to scroll, like while I'm scrolling through the details of the event, the footer bar here is always at the bottom. And then I can click on the button and then I get a pop-up because I didn't log in yet. So at least we're going to implement these two different things. So the bar at the bottom, and when I click on it, I have the pop-up dialog over here. So we're going to implement this as real as possible. And notice that this bar is going to disappear if I go to the home page or any other page. Right? It only shows up when I try to look at an event and then try to click on the attend button over here, and then it just shows up a dialog there, and then a dialog shows up. So this bar is only at the details page. So let's jump into actually the details slice, the details slice over here, the view event slice, and try to implement that. This means that I'm going to have the bar display right here. I can already foresee some problems, but let's go ahead and try to see what it's going to look like. So I have a footer. I can use a footer class. And it's already generated these code for me. I can close it. So we want this footer to span across the whole screen. At this moment, we are using the main layout, which is this main layout right here. And then you can see that this is a container. This is not a fluid container, which means that we have a margin on the left and margin on the right. So I want this footer to span across the whole screen. Therefore, I need the container fluid. I'm going to try at least to use this and see whether it can go across. Since in my implementation here, the top bar is dark, okay, I'm going to use a dark footer as well. So here I'm going to say background is dark, and then I want the text to be white, and I'm going to have some padding on the vertical direction. And because the footer is going to be stuck at the bottom, right? It's not going to scroll as I scroll my mouse. So I'm going to say position is fixed, and I need to say bottom 0. Okay, so this is going to make it fixed at the bottom, at bottom 0. And I want it to be 100%. I just want to make sure this container fluid really works. That's why I'm adding this, with 100%. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, it has some stuff here. So this is not the date. This is the begin date. So begin date. This is the automatic generated code. It doesn't actually look at the properties inside the view model. Let's run it again. And everything succeeded. Let's take a look. So we do have this bar display like this. I don't like it. We can fix it later, but you can notice that this bar is not actually spanning across the screen. On the right side, it actually expanded, but on the left side, there's still a margin here. I don't actually see a workaround for this. So, but at least you can see that the scrolling now works. And well, we have a problem right here. This is hiding behind the bar. So we need to fix that too. Just notice these problems and then we're trying to fix that later. But first of all, let's don't worry about this information here. We need to get this bar span across the whole screen. So in order to do that, I don't see any way to actually fix this problem on this particular page, on this view event details page. We will have to put this bar on the main layout because you see the main layout has this main section, whereas all of the other pages, all of the components are rendered right here, replacing the body placeholder. So if we can have a footer right here, then it would be able to expand across the whole screen. Now you can see that it tries to automatically generate this, but doesn't work because we don't have the view model. Right? We don't have the view model right here. The view model is only on the view event component page. Right? Trying to get the view model in here is not really a good practice considering we're using vertical slice. But you can see it really tries to generate all of the classes for me. Right? Knows what I was trying to do. Maybe you heard what I said. But anyways, let's actually go back. I'm going to reverse this, and then I'm going to delete the third one, but I'm going to hard code something. Right? I'm going to just hard code. Maybe location is Toronto, and the date is, let's just say today. I'm just hard coding, just for testing purpose. And of course here, I can't let it happen here. I'm gonna delete this because it doesn't actually work. I'm gonna put the footer here and just see what it looks like. Okay, we need to get the look and feel ready. Now it's rejoining the server. You can see that now it's actually working nicely, at least across the whole thing. And then we just need to solve the problems of going up and down. Now, this way of displaying this actually makes the bar too tall. So we need to fix this problem. And to fix that, I'm going to go to the place where we display the event, which is in the Discover Events component here. So you can see that we have these two, right? This two paragraph. And I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to use those two paragraphs. Now, of course, we don't have the event view model. So I'm going to just say here today, the title, right? So this is my event. I'm just going to use this hard-coded text. And here, text muted won't work. I'm going to change to, let's say, card text. And we'll see how this looks like. Run again. Okay, now you can see the bar becomes much smaller, right? And the look and feel here, let's make it smaller so that I can see. And the look and feel here, you can see it's not bad, right? It's not that bad. And the padding, let's see whether, let's actually remove this and let's run again and see whether that can actually make it even smaller. Okay, so it's just smaller, right? It's smaller, but I do want some padding, not completely remove it, because this time it doesn't look very nice as comparing with before. So let's add, let's use developer tool. So instead of 3, I'm gonna try 1. What about 2? Okay, I think 2 is fine. 2 is fine. If you look at this, it has a, maybe this one is using 3, but I think 2 is good. I'm gonna change this to 2 here, and it doesn't matter where you add it. So I'm gonna add it right here. So vertical padding, and the look and feel is good. Now we need to solve the problem, right? We need to access the event information here, but this is the main layout, right? In order to access the event, like what are you gonna do here? You can, because of the main layout, so every page you're hitting is going to use this main layout, and because of that, you can sort of getting the event ID from the URL by using navigation manager, and then you get the ID and load the event, and then use the event information inside this footer. Right? You can do that, but then don't forget that the main layout is inside the shared folder, which means that this is not of any slice. However, you are really doing some slice specific work that way. We're encountering this vertical slice architecture, specific problems that are related to this specific architecture. So, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's kind of constrain our hands, right? We can't do everything freely, but then at the same time, this constraint also helps us with a good organization, good architecture. At this moment, after several hours in, of implementing this project using vertical slice architecture, I'm still not very convinced that this extra amount of time just to work around the architecture is absolutely worth it. But at the same time, I'm also seeing some benefits. So let's continue, and then maybe at the end of the project, we will review about the architecture and see whether I really like it or not really like it. Let's just stick to the architecture and try to work around that. So for this, to solve this problem, I still think that we need to have this information populated to the slice, right? So these have to be inside the slice instead of in the main layout. So if you have some experience with ASP.NET Core MVC or Razor pages, you would be thinking about using a section, right? If we can create a section right here, and then inside the slice, maybe we can call it the attend event slice. Inside that slice, if we can target the section, then we can just put these markup inside that section within the slice. Then it will just render it right here. That would be the best. However, we're using Blazor, and Blazor doesn't actually have this section thing, but Blazor has something similar, which is called render fragment. But a typical render fragment implementation involves, declare a render fragment inside this main layout, which doesn't really work because we are not reusing the main layout in the typical way. We are using the main layout on every single one without specifying it as a component. So in order to use render fragment, we actually have to create a class. So if you have never done this, this could be new to you, and it's also going to be very interesting. So actually, let's try to create a class. And this class is going to be a shared inside the shared folder. And I'm going to call it layout service. So because of that, I'm going to actually go over here and create a subfolder, and I'm going to call it services. In case that later we're going to need some other services, but right now I'm going to create a class under the services folder, and I'm going to call it layout service, because this is going to help us to add some addition functionality to the layout. That's why I call it layout service. I'm going to create a public property, and the type of that is render fragment. And I'm going to say, I'm going to use question mark, so it may be there, it may not be there. So I'm going to call this section content. So remember, we're trying to implement a section type of functionality, similar to MVC or Razor pages. We don't want the user to actually set it, so I'm going to make a private setter. And then what I want to do is to use set section content, and it's it's already giving me this implemented this for me. Now what I need to do is that once the user or once this method is being called, we need to make sure that the content is rendered by calling, but I can't call it right here, right? I have to call it from main layout, right? So therefore I'm going to create an action, right? So I'm going to say action, and I'm going to call it on content changed. And then here I'm going to say on content changed, and I'm going to use the generated code, right? So I'm going to invoke this action as soon as the render fragment is set. And now I'm going to register the layout service in the program.cs. Okay, I'm going to come over here and just do it on the top. For this one, I can have a singleton, and I'm going to control dot import namespace. Now I have the layout service dependency injected. Just put it into the dependency container. And now I can go back to the main layout, which is right here. And I can inject this into the main layout. So I'm going to say layout service. Now it doesn't recognize this, but I'm going to do a control dot to import namespace. Over here, I'm going to take the layout service. I'm going to get rid of this by using the layout service so that we can eventually use the layout service to provide this footer content. So in order to do that, I'm going to say, let's try a div. I'm not sure it's going to work, but let's try a div. And then over here, I'm gonna just use the layout service, and I'm gonna say section content. So basically we are using the layout service to provide the render fragment, and then the render fragment will be rendered, inside this div. And let's comment this out for now, so we don't need it until later. So this will be rendered here. The question is, who's going to set it? Of course, we are going to set it at the place where the footer is needed. And that is in our view event component page here. So I'm going to come over here at the bottom, and I'm going to override the, let's see on override actually works or not. So I'm going to say on after. It doesn't work anymore, but let's use AI to generate it. So I'm going to say override on after render. We don't need async. Rely on AI. Okay, so well, it's still doing this async thing. I'm going to change it to synchronous version. Remove this. And do I need it? No, I don't need the status changed. Okay, so here, this is where I'm going to actually use the layout service to set the content. So therefore, I'm going to inject the layout service, and I'm going to do a control dot to import namespace, but I'm going to take it to the import star razor. So I'm going to put it right here. Coming back. Now color coding is back, and we can use it directly here. So here, this is the place I'm going to set the content. And I don't know whether you have seen this. You can actually write HTML in here, right? Because this is render fragment. You can use HTML directly as a parameter here. So if I say footer and footer, you can see it doesn't like it, right? But if you add a @ sign, you're basically telling that this is a section of HTML, and it works, right? So because of this works, I'm going to go back to the main layout. Where is it? And I'm going to copy this, or actually cut it and remove this. And then I'm going to go back and just paste it right here. Paste the entire thing right here. Okay. Now this is not going to show up in the main layout, because here is that you know that this page itself is using main layout, but this is on after render, and this is all, which means it's already rendered, and we have to somehow make sure that it re-renders, right? It re-renders. The main layout have to re-renders by calling state has changed. And we talked about that a little bit just now. So in order to actually make sure it re-renders, we're going to add a code block over here. And then we're going to deal with the, remember the action, right? Which is the delegate. So for that purpose, I'm going to use the automatically generated code, but I don't need the async version. So again, change this to, oh no, I don't need the after render. I need to override uninitialize, but it doesn't do it. So again, I'm going to use comment, and it does. Okay, this time it works. So I have layout, and I set the content. This is not the place I set the content. This is the place I register the on content change. And when the on content change, I'm going to say state has changed. And because of that, I need to make sure that I remove this delegate. So I'm going to come to the top, and I'm going to say implement I disposable. And then I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I say public void dispose. And now if you scroll up, the red squiggly line is gone, because it implemented this this method. And inside here, I'm going to just copy this, and I'm going to use the minus sign to get rid of it. Okay, make sure that there's no memory leak this way. But I hope you understand how this works, right? So let's go over here. So when this view event component, which is this view event details component, renders, after you render for the first time, we're gonna set the content, which is the render fragment. So by doing it, I want this information. This is div. Oh no, I didn't. So this is footer. Okay, I want this footer to be displayed inside the main layout right here. However, it won't happen until the state has changed. It's called, and we made sure that we called the set section, and in the set section method, we made sure that this action is invoked. And when this action is invoked, right, it's going to trigger the state has changed. Okay, now I see a potential problem, but I'm gonna run it, and then you will see what I'm referring to. So let's run it, and let's see how this works. Coming back over here, let's remove this developer tool. Okay, so you can see that we have this error already, and let's bring up developer tool, and let's look at the console. So it complains that there was an unhandled exception on the current circuit. So the circuit will be terminated. Details error. We need to look at the details errors, but I already know what the problem is. See, they're not using the same thread. We are in the main layout, but then what is triggering this event is in a different component here, right, which is right here in the view event component. And we are trying to trigger the state has changed by calling the set section content in a different component. And it's going to, it considers it not thread safe, so it refuses to do it. So in order to make sure that it is thread safe, let's create another method here. So I'm going to say private, and this time it has to be an async method. And I'm going to say update layout section. So what I would do here is I'm going to call the status changed, but I'm going to use the invoke async method here. I'm going to do it like this, status changed. And if you hover the mouse over this invoke async, it tells you that execute the supplied work item on the associated render's synchronization context. So synchronization context is a keyword. If you don't understand it, you can do a research. I do have a C# multithreading and asynchronous programming course, and you can check out the description area for information to get access to the course. So if I do it this way, and then instead of calling the status change directly here, I can put update layout section here and then remove it from here. Okay, this should, in theory, solve the problem. Run the application again, and let's let it rejoin the circuit. Now you can see that it shows my hard-coded information. And then if I go to Meetup, it still shows my hard-coded information. So which means that somehow we need to clean this up. We need to get rid of this. So before we try to get rid of that, let's actually put real information in here. So the real information is going to follow. Let's again go to discover slides over here. So I need to recopy this because I need the real information. Let's close this. Coming back over here, change this to cart text. So not text muted, cart text, because otherwise it's going to be a gray color and it doesn't look good on the dark background. And then this EV is going to be changed to event view model. And perhaps we need to make sure that the event view model is actually there. So I'm going to go inside in here. I'm going to say if is not now, is not now. And then I'm going to move this to line inside it. Do a Control KF. Oh, Control KF doesn't work really well. But let's manually move it inside. And this time, I think it should be okay. Okay, now let's go to SQL discussion. Now you can see that the information is missing here, right? It's completely missing, but let's go back. Oh, if I go back, the information is back. So this is actually still related to the status changed problem. So let's examine what is actually happening. So inside the main, right here, we have initialized and we're calling status changed. I can see that there could be some issues with subscriptions to the event. So you can see this is in the uninitialized. The problem with the uninitialized is that it has a pre-rendering, which means that this event is actually being, this event hook is being triggered twice. And there will be two versions of this method being registered to the layout service. And also you can see that we have this dispose. And when the pre-rendering is happening the first time, this dispose method will be called. And it's going to take away that registration. And this somehow could cause the error. So I think what I want to do is I want to do a override. And I want to override the on after render. Okay. Not the async version. Async. Okay, good. So I want to do it this way, and then I'm going to put this right here so that it's only called once, and I'm going to remove it. So I think this would be better, but then let's go to the view event component right here and scroll down here because this is on parameters async. So this could be triggered after rendering. So I think the safest way to register this, to set the content is actually, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to actually put it inside the parameters set async here. Right. So this way, I'm sure that I will have a event view model. I don't even need this inside the HTML. I can check it here, or maybe I don't check it, and then it will throw exceptions if it's null. Okay? So this way, I think we should be able to fix the problem. Let's run it again, make sure the problem is fixed. Actually, let's turn this off, close this, and let's run it again. So this time, why I have to close the application is because we are using singleton. Okay? And if we keep the application running, then there could be something already stuck in the application. I don't want to use whatever that was already there. So let's take a look. So this is a new application that was just started. And then let's go to SQL. And now immediately you can see that information is displayed, right? That's pretty good. Let's go back and go to Meetup, and information is displayed. So everything is working properly. I think the main problem is really this on-parameter thing. On parameter set async. You can verify that by actually testing that yourself. Removing this if statement, I think it would have already throw exception. So keeping this information inside on parameter set over here makes more sense, and everything is working properly. Okay, except this one. So we will need to fix this. So let's actually inspect. And you can see that this part sticks all the way to the bottom. So in order to fix this problem, let's see what we can do here. Let's first of all examine this. Let's edit this as HTML. What I want to do is I want to give it a div so that I can control it better. I'm going to move this closing tag to the bottom. And then let's go up over here. Let's add some style here. I'm going to add a margin bottom, and let's set it to 100 pixel and see whether this would do anything. Oh, not a margin, maybe a padding bottom. I don't know whether margin will help or padding. Let's actually see. So apparently margin didn't help. Let's see whether we can change that to padding. Okay, now you can see padding actually helped. If we examine this, you can see the padding actually helped a lot. Let's change it to actually use smaller padding because we don't need that much. Let's say maybe 50. Oh, that's too close. Let's change to 60. Okay, much better. Okay, so that fixed our problem. And to duplicate this, let's go to our view event detail and let's wrap this with div. Move this to the bottom, do Control KF, and then we're gonna say padding bottom, okay, and 60 pixels. This should be good. Now, one more thing we need to do. Well, I guess a few things we need to do. First of all, let's run it again. So this is working, right? But if I go to Meetup, you see this information is still being displayed here. And this is definitely not something I really want. So we need to clear. So how do we clear it when we go to other pages? Because right now, if I go to org events, you see that the bar is still here because this is just kept in the main layout. Right? Even we're using the organizers pages, right? Trying to, let's say I'm trying to edit this, the bar is still here, and this is pretty odd. Okay? So we need to really fix this issue by clearing the bar whenever we go to other pages. And one way to fix this problem that I can think of is to use a base component. So let's close this all up, and then let's go to the shared folder, and let's go to component here, and let's create a base component class. So I'm going to call it base component, right? And it's going to derive from component base, and do a control dot, import the namespace, right? Component base, and we want to clear the render fragment. So because of that, I need to inject the layout service. So I'm going to say service, and it doesn't recognize it. I'm going to import namespace, and I'm going to change this to use protected. Okay. And now I want to override uninitialize and see, comment it out, and then let it generate the code for me. So over here, I want to say layout service. So layout service, I'm going to change this to lowercase. It doesn't make sense to use uppercase. So I'm going to say layout service dot question mark dot set section content. And I'm going to use null to clear everything out. Okay, there's nothing in the footer. And now if I inherit from the base component, so let's go to the features, and which one is our homepage? It's the discover events, right? This is our homepage. You can see the slash here, and all we have to do is somewhere here we say inherit, right? Inherit, and then base component. So this would just clear everything whenever uninitialize is called. Our code is not dependent on uninitialize. I mean, our code of rendering the footer is not dependent on initialize. So that shouldn't create any issue for us. So let's go to Meetup, and the bar is missing now, which is a good sign. Let's go to SQL. Now we can see it, and let's go back, and the bar is closed. I mean, the bar is disappeared. The bar disappeared. So that's pretty good. Let's go this Meetup one, and then try one more time, and this. So that works. So which means that we just need to copy this and paste it in all of the other component here. Let's go to added event over here and just paste it here. And let's go to view created event here. I'm gonna paste it right here. And view event is the place where we do need to display the bar, right? So we're not gonna paste it here. So delete, this is actually a component. This is not a page component, but this one is. So we're gonna also, so this should fix our problem. And let's run it, make sure everything works. So we have this bar displayed, go to homepage, disappeared. Now let's go to org, and the bar, actually we need to display this first and then go to org, right? Now disappeared. Again, we gotta make sure it's up. Now it's up, and we want to go to /org/ I forgot the URL, so let's go to here. make sure, first of all, make sure the bar is here, and then I'm going to go to /org/events/create, and the bar disappeared. I don't want to test every single one, but our base component is working for clearing the footer. Now, I think the one last thing is that we're having our view component setting the section, which means that all of the functionalities of the attending, at least the attending button, this is not actually the last one, probably the second last step. We need to extract this into a different slice. So let's try to do that. Let's try to create another folder, and let's call this attend event. Should I call it attend event or should I call it RSVP event? Maybe let's call it RSVP event. RSVP event, and let's create a Blazor component under the folder, and let's call it RSVP event component. And this is following the pattern. I don't think I should call it RSVP event component. I think I could call it RSVP event footer component, because we will probably have a RSVP event, actual RSVP event component later. So let's call it footer, and then if this one becomes the actual RSVP event component, then we'll change the name. But let's call it footer. And because it's footer, let's go over here and let's just copy this whole thing and let's paste it over there. Replace this, and we have this view model. We need to have it passed in as a parameter. So this is going to be the event view model, and let's call it event. We will have a question mark over here, and at the very top we can say if the event is not now, then I'm gonna move this down to Ctrl+KF here, and then I'm gonna replace all of this event view model with the underscore event. Okay, good. Now let's use the RSVP event. So RSVP event footer component, not like this, as an element, so like this. So it tries to import. So I'm going to take this away, and going up to the top, I'm going to say using, okay, and here I need to pass in the event. So this is the underscore, okay. So this is much better, and let's give it a test. Make sure it still works. Go to SQL, now it works. Go back, Meetup, also works. Okay, so this is the part that we're following the vertical slice architecture, right? But the main challenge we have been facing is the footer. Because of the vertical slice architecture, we can't do the things that we want to do freely. We can't mix the code in the main layout. Therefore, we created this layout service thing inside the services folder, and then we're setting the fragment, render fragment right here in the onParameter set, right? We have been spending a lot of time on that. And then finally, we created a slice for the RSVP. Another thing is that we need a button here, and that is the attend button, which is very similar to what we have in the actual meetup.com, right? And because of that, I want to have a div around this because I want the button to be on the right-hand side. So I'm gonna move this inside the div, and this div will have a class container. And for the second div, I'm gonna put the button over here. So the button is gonna be BTN and BTN outline light, just like the one on header. And on click is going to go to attend, and here this is attend. And at the bottom, let's attend method implemented. So private void attend. And this is going to display the dialog as what I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And we need to wrap around this with another div in order to have it rendered, to the left and to the right. So container D, I'm going to use flex and align items center. Move this loading tag to the bottom, and this should work. Without implementing the attend, let's run it again. making sure that we have okay, so we have the attend on the right hand side, and we have this information displayed right here. And yeah, we just need to implement the attend button. And let's go down. So the attend button, we want to show a dialog. And we already have the dialog. I mean, we have a confirmation dialog, right? So we can implement something like this. We can have a generic dialog implemented. I just made a copy. And I'm going to rename it to just call it dialog component. Inside here, it's not a confirm dialog, so we don't need the confirm method there. And perhaps we don't even need the footer. So let's delete this whole thing. We do have this cancel thing because it's not a cancel anymore. I'm going to change it to close. Okay, change this one to close. And we don't have a message to display. So I'm going to delete this unconfirm, delete the message. We don't need it. And we don't need the message, we don't need the unconfirmed, so delete all of these. So what we do need here for the model body part is actually a render fragment. So let's declare a render fragment at the bottom. So we will have a parameter. A render fragment is a parameter in this case. So prop and render fragment question mark, and I'm gonna call it dialog body. So we're gonna render this render fragment just right here. Dialog body, just like this. Now the title here is not gonna be called confirm, but it needs to be passed in from outside. So I'm gonna create another parameter. In this case, we're gonna have a string type and call it title. And I'm gonna display the title right here. That's it. Anything else I need to do? I don't think so. So we can use this dialog. No, I need to delete this. Yeah, I think we can just use this inside the new one, RSVP. Right. So here, if the event is there, I'm gonna have the dialog component, and I'm gonna use the generated code. Oh, I didn't. So here I'm just call it dialog, and then I'm gonna have this dialog component, the dialog right here, and over here in the attend, I'm gonna show the dialog. Okay, in this video is already too long, so I'm not going to implement the actual authentication with anything, but we're gonna show the dialog. So what is happening here? There's no argument that corresponds to the required. Oh, okay. So, you know, we don't need any of these parameters. So I'm gonna delete that. Okay, so this is good. The title here is missing. I'm gonna say sign up. Let's say sign up to attend this event. Okay, this is the same information as the meetup. That's why I'm using it. And then don't forget to have the render fragment. Specify that. So here, let's say dialog body, and then we have our render fragment. It's generated something for me. So let's just use the temporarily generated stuff and let's give it a try. Okay, let's click on the attend, and it's a dialog and it's showing me this. Let's click on this. It's closed. Click on this. Doesn't do anything because we didn't implement anything, but the close works. The showing up also works. Let's go to Meetup, and the bar is disappearing. So go over here. It's coming back. And later, we're going to populate the body with the correct content for maybe we're going to use Google authentication or Facebook authentication. I'm not sure yet, but I think at least we have implemented the showing up of the dialog, implemented the bar. We're displaying the meetup information right here and the attend button. Again, we have been facing a particular challenge just because we're using vertical slice architecture. What do you say? Do you think it's worth it to go through such a trouble in order to implement just a footer? It would be fairly easy if we just use the main layout. So where's the main layout? Go to layout, main layout. If we just implement the code over here, right? And then we check, we grab the event ID and we display the event information right here. I don't think that's a big trouble. At least it's going to be way faster than doing all of this. Here, the main trouble is really just because we're using this shared service. Where is the service? The service right here. We're using this layout service. And we're using this action to create a publisher and subscriber pattern. And we're using main layout to receive this notification in order to display. Right? The main layout is subscribing to this on content change, and then it renders this section content inside here as a footer. So we're going through all of this trouble. Do you say it's worth it or not? It's a question for you. But at least you can see we're not breaking the vertical slice architecture, and we have everything nicely encapsulated as features. Anyway, I'm going to see you in the next one to actually implement the authentication for the user to be able to log in, probably through Google, and we register the user as the actual user, and we associate the user with the event. Okay, I'll see you in the next one.